Baseball fans, fantasy baseball players, I hope you're enjoying the All-Star break, but I also hope you're being proactive and you're making some moves that can help you win in the second half because this is the best time to do that. That includes stashing some prospects that are about to be called up, especially with the trade deadline almost here. Let's start with a prospect that don't even have to speculate. I know he's getting called up because the Dodgers have announced that immediately following the All-Star break, River Ryan will be joining their rotation. Now, while he is a top 5 overall prospect for this franchise, he's also a guy who does not have a lot of experience. Remember, this is a former infielder who was converted to a pitcher, and he's been good, but very limited in terms of usage. But this is a move born out of necessity. As you know, especially if you are a Dodgers fan, Yoshinobu Yamamoto was great until he hit the IL and is not coming back till mid-August. Tyler Glass now in the running for the National League Cy Young Award. He's been amazing until he also hit the IL. And then there's Clayton Kershaw and Walker Buehler. And then, of course, Bobby Miller, just when he came back, got sent down because he was just bad. If you watched yesterday's video, you already know what I said about Bobby Miller and what to do with him. But what do you do with River Ryan? Well, you stash him right now because, ready or not, he's going to be the short-term solution. Now, as far as Ryan's usage, that's the number one concern here because this year he hasn't even topped 75 pitches in a start. So it wouldn't shock me to see him go 5 innings max, maybe not even, but they need him, and so you might just have to get stretched out. Let's see how effective he is coming in. This is definitely a pitcher who, as much talent as he has some risk, but let's face it, the Dodgers are really hoping that this works out. And hey, the talent is there, the situation is there. Let's take a chance here. Let's stash River Ryan right now, especially in deeper leagues and NL-only leagues. Now, this next prospect, you might think just sounds like an excuse for me to talk about a player who is an active member and has been on the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp franchise the entire season. You'd be partially right. But Victor Mesa Jr. isn't just one of the best hitting prospects for the Marlins franchise. He might be getting the call soon. So the obvious thing, as always, it's an annual tradition. The Marlins will be sellers at their trade deadline. But here's a couple of recent developments that have made me pick back up on Victor Mesa Jr. again and why I think his call-up might be imminent. So one player that I guess I kind of falsely assumed might not be traded is the guy who now sounds like he will be traded. That's the face of the franchise, their best player, Jazz Chisholm. I mean, there's teams interested, and the Marlins don't seem to care who they trade. They'll get rid of anybody to rebuild. So Jazz might be on his way out. In fact, they're already talking about after the break, moving him back to second base to play in the infield, which is where he started out. Remember, this is a shortstop, turned second baseman, turned center fielder in order to preserve his body a little bit. But they want to showcase him, show that he can play around the diamond for potential suitors. So there's that. There's a spot in the outfield just from that alone. And of course, once Jazz gets traded, if that happens, that opens up a big spot. And then a guy who had been playing recently, Dane Myers, well, he's out now. He's going to be out 6 to 8 weeks. He has a fractured foot after, and I'm not kidding here, he got upset and kicked the clubhouse too hard and basically broke his own foot. So there's that. So it's only logical that Victor Mesa Jr. does get called up to the big team, at least in August. He's been pretty solid this year. Look, I know this is a guy who's a little bit more power than speed. His power's been all right. Got 13 home runs, 48 RBIs in the season, hitting 268. Again, not numbers that wow you, but it's been solid. The good thing is he has cut down big time on his strikeout rate as he's moved up levels. The plate discipline is there, but most of all, he's definitely going to have the opportunity basically to play every day once he does get called up. Now, during the break, you might have caught part of the futures game. This is where we can see some of the top prospects in all of baseball. A lot of times these are younger players, guys who are maybe even single A, not ready for prime time. But then sometimes you get those guys in double, triple A, who maybe will see some action this season. One player I think that might happen with is Rhett Lauder of the Cincinnati Reds, one of their top pitching prospects. Actually, it's their #1 overall prospect. Now, Cincinnati, well, I don't think they're really contenders, no matter how much they win in the next couple of weeks. I'm not sure that'll change, but they do need an arm in that rotation. Got a lot of injuries. Carson Spears just hit the shelf. They could use a guy like this, and this is a good time to get his feet wet at the major league level. So in that futures game I just mentioned, he did pick up a hold after going 1 scoreless inning. I point that out because, well, impressive, I guess, but also it's kind of the highlight of his season so far. I'm not gonna lie, he's been pretty uneven, if you want to call it that, at the AA level, playing for the Chattanooga Lookouts. 6.52 ERA, a 1.57 whip. Not too good, right? He's had some good starts and he's had some really bad starts. So it's hard to say what he might do at the major league level, but again, I want to point out the fact that readiness, is not the same for all prospects. All young players do not develop on a linear path. And there's plenty of examples of guys who don't have even good numbers the same year in the minors and then look really good at the majors. I don't know why it just happens. So I'm not excluding Louder from my list just because his ERA isn't good at AA. This guy has a wipeout slider that can play up at any level. And so if we see the Reds part with even more veteran pitching, open up even more spots in their rotation where they already need help, yeah, I feel pretty confident we'll see Louder sooner than later. Another team I keep saying should be a seller. I don't know if they will be. They really ought to be. But if so, the Blue Jays might look to their top pitching prospect and number one overall prospect, and that's Ricky Tiedemann. I actually debated not talking about Tiedemann because he's had so many injuries just this year alone. It's a high injury risk. I'm not really sure if they will debut him this year. There could be multiple openings in their rotation and their bullpen after the trade deadline if they really clean house and trade their veterans, which again, they really ought to. So I'm also looking at a guy like Adam Macko, who's been good and also deserves a chance with a big club, but he also just recently got hurt. Don't know when he's coming back. And then there's a guy like Chad Dallas. He's just been really bad in the minors, and he's taken a step back in terms of his command. Don't think he's major league ready. Let's just go back to Tiedemann. At some point, I do feel like they will debut him. The question is for how long? Will he be a starter? How long will they let him go? This could be like a Yariel Rodriguez situation where he goes 3 innings at a time. And so obviously his usefulness in fantasy would be limited. But let's just keep a watch here. If they feel he's ready, if they need him and they call him up, this is a guy you are going to take a chance on. And speaking of the position players for Toronto, they could also make some moves there. I said it's time for Justin Turner to exit from fantasy rosters because he just hasn't been useful and he might also get moved to another team. That could open up a spot for Damiano Palmegiani. Now, Palmegiani is not a top prospect for the Blue Jays. Right now, an MLB Pipeline ranks as their number 14 overall prospect. Last year was top 30 in their system. This is somebody who hasn't put up great numbers. He's got some power, just needs to work on that approach a little bit. But look, he could make an impact at some point. He does have, like I said, a little bit of pop. He was pretty good in the Arizona Fall League when he played not too long ago. Hit 263, 6 home runs, and 21 RBIs in 22 games. What's nice is that he can play either first or third base. Again, I'm kind of counting on Toronto being sellers here. If they move on from Turner, maybe a guy like Ernie Clement who's filled in nicely, but really is just kind of a utility veteran bat. Maybe he gets shipped off, who knows. But Palmegiani is a guy who I feel at some point they'll at least give him a cup of coffee. So if we're waiting until September here, sure, you don't have to stash him now. I don't think the upside's that great, but I am really, really interested in what Toronto does in the coming weeks. So this is one of the names that kind of popped out to me in what's honestly a mostly disappointing farm system. And I know I've talked a ton about the Diamondbacks on Beat the Breakout lately. Let's throw one more in there. And this is a guy who, honestly, there is no need for another catcher, but Adrian Del Castillo is hitting so well at this point, he might force himself up at some point or just be waiting for an opportunity. Now, this is a guy who played his college ball at the U, that would be University of Miami, for those who don't know. He actually played some third base and some right field there, but he is a catcher. He's got strong enough defense to stick there. But with his bat alone, they might be able to find another home for him or DH him. Who knows? I also don't know if the D-backs will be buyers, sellers, or what at the deadline. Another team I'm very curious to see what they do. But again, I'm just looking at what he has done so far. Again, at some point, they could just use a bat like his. In his second full season at the AAA level, right now at the break, hitting .318 with 20 home runs and 56 RBIs. Got a very low strikeout rate, just under 17%. This guy who makes great contact. he's not really known as a slugger, not a true power hitter. Some of these ranking sites, they got him much lower. Fangraphs has him as number 36 prospect in the D-back system. MLB Pipeline's got him 27. So again, this is not a highly thought of prospect necessarily, guy who they say is more of a doubles hitter than a home run hitter. Sometimes scouting reports just are wrong, or they miss, or a guy exceeds expectations. Whatever the case, I'm looking at the production, looking at the fact he can be an impact player, I think, sooner than later. I'm not going out of my way to stash him because, again, I don't feel like there's a need here for the D-backs, especially if you're looking at catcher. Gabriel Moreno has not been great for fantasy, but he's fine in real life, and they're not going to push him out of the starting job there. And even the backup Herrera, he's been fine too. So we'll see if something cracks open here, an opportunity for Del Castillo. I would say only in deep leagues, two catcher leagues especially, I might speculate on Del Castillo, but definitely keep an eye on him. Those are some exciting young prospects to stash. I already mentioned, though, there might be some aging veterans who you might want to cut. I talked about that and more on the cut list. You won't want to miss it.